Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Spiritual Edition. And today we're continuing our reading of Thiaoouba Prophecy, The Golden Planet. And the subtitle is called A True Report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. And the author's name is Michel Desmarquet. So this particular book was inspired by a podcast I did with a guy named Samuel Chung. He was instrumental in getting this book translated to Chinese and published, eventually published in Chinese. So apparently it's a very popular book in China. Yeah, very interesting. Anyways, you can check out the podcast below in the description box, description link, or whatever you call it, on YouTube. And check out our other podcast as well. We try to put out podcasts about once a month. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way, but we try to do it pretty regularly, as guests pop up, whoever the universe wants me to interview. And I think I've interviewed some pretty interesting people. So check that out. It's on our website. We have a uh, tab that says podcast, and we'll have all the podcasts on there. We also have a monthly newsletter that we put out, and sign up for us there with us there on it's on our website as well. And find out, follow us along, find out what we're doing, things like that. And we also have a YouTube channel where we put up, past books that we've read on there as well. So you could check that out. And we have Wednesdays. We have health book clubs that we read. We read a health book, anything about health. And Thursdays we have financial book clubs. So check those out as well. And then you know, um, if you're visiting us or if you're local in the LA area, come and visit us in our healing center. We use our scalar wave. Well, we use technologies based on Nikola Tesla's scalar wave research for holistic healings for dogs and cats, animals, and humans. So you could check out all the information, learn more about it on our website as well. And if you find this helpful and valuable, support us on our with our merch. We have a merch section, and we're working on different designs and things like that. Um, so yeah, come back periodically to check it out. And if you have books that you want the book club to read, I'll leave a link in the description box below. Um, yeah, and suggest it. We like to read books that have been around for a while, that have stood the test of time. Um, I think that they have a lot of truth in it. I don't know if it's 100% truth, but some truth, right? So, anyways, that's it for that. Okay, so this is chapter 6, and let's see here. This chapter is called The Seven Masters and the Aura. Now, the book doesn't have the chapter number. The number is something that I've sort of came up with just to help me, um, what do you call it? Keep track of things, right? But anyway, so this chapter is called The Seven Masters and the Aura. And I'm going to move the camera in just a little bit. If you have your own book, you could follow with us there. If not, you could follow with us on camera here, whatever works for you. All right, let's do it. A huge flame burned blue, orange, yellow, and red flames burned around it. An enormous black snake slid straight through the flames, heading for me. Giants appeared from nowhere, running and trying to catch the snake. It took 7 of them together to stop it before it reached me, but it turned and swallowed the flames only to spit them back out like a dragon at the giants. They were transformed into immense statues just as they were, mounted on the tail of a snake. The reptile became a comet and carried the statues off. to Easter Island. Next, they were greeting me, wearing strange hats. One of the statues, resembling Tao, caught me by the shoulder and said, Michelle, Michelle, wake up. Tao was shaking me and gently smiling. My goodness, I said, opening my eyes. I was dreaming you were an Easter Island statue and that you caught hold of me by the shoulder. I am an Easter Island statue, and I did take you by the shoulder. Anyway, I'm not dreaming now, am I? No, but your dream was really quite strange. For an Easter Island, there is a statue which was sculptured a very long time ago to immortalize me, and which was given my name. What are you telling me now? The simple truth, Michelle, but we will explain all that to you in good time. For now, we will try on these clothes I've brought for you. Tao handed me a richly colored robe, which quite delighted me, and after a warm and perfumed bath, I dressed in the garment. A feeling of euphoria, which was totally unexpected, overwhelmed me. I mentioned it to Tao, who was waiting with a glass of milk and a little manna for me. The colors of your robe were chosen according to those of your aura. That's why you feel so good. If people on earth were able to see auras, they too could choose colors which suit them and thereby enhance their feeling of well-being. They make use of color rather than aspirin. What do you mean exactly? I'll give you an example. Do you ever remember saying of someone, "Oh, those clothes don't suit you at all," or he or she has no taste? Just a side note, my mom used to say that to me. Okay, yes, quite often, in fact. Well, in such cases, those people have simply chosen their clothes less skillfully than others, or mixed them less successfully. As you say in French, they jouent or clash, but more in the eyes of others than in their own. However, such people will not feel good in themselves without without realizing why. If you were to suggest it, be because of the colors they were wearing, they would think you odd. You could explain that the vibrations of the colors were in discord with those of the auras, but they would be no more inclined to believe you. On your planet, people only believe in what they see or touch, and yet the aura can be seen. The aura is actually colored? Of course. The aura vibrates constantly with colors that vary. At the top of your head is a veritable bouquet of colors, where almost all the colors you know are represented. Around the head, too, is a golden halo, but it is only really obvious in the most highly spiritual people and in those who have sacrificed themselves in order to help someone else. The halo resembles a golden mist, much like painters on earth depict the halos of saints and of Christ. The halos were included in their paintings because in those times some of the artists actually saw them. Yes, I have heard mention of that, but I'd love to hear it from you. The colors are all here in the aura. Some shine more strongly, others are dull. People in poor health, for example, or people with bad intentions. I would like so much to see the auras. I know there are people who can see it. Many people on earth could see it and read it a very long time ago, but there are few now. Calm yourself, Michelle. You will see it, but not only one, but several, including your own. Now, though, I'll ask you to follow me because we have so much to show you and little time available. I followed Tao, who placed my mask on my face and led the way to the flying platform we had used the day before. We took our places, and immediately Tao began maneuvering the machine so that it dodged below the branches of trees. In a matter of moments, we had emerged on the beach. The sun had just risen behind the island and lit up the ocean and surrounding islands. From water level, the effect was magical. As we proceeded along the beach, I could see other dokos through the foliage, nestled among flowering bushes. On the beach, the inhabitants of these dwellings bathed in transparent waters or strolled together on the sand. Apparently surprised to see our flying platform, they followed our progress as we passed. It occurred to me that this was not the usual means of transport on the island. I should mention too, although swimmers and sunbathers are always completely naked on Thiaoouba, those who stroll or move any significant distance always dress to do so. On this planet, that is neither there is neither hypocrisy, exhibitionism, nor false modesty. This will be explained later. It was not long before we reached the end of the island, and accelerating, Tao guided the vehicle at water level. We headed in the direction of a large island, which could be seen on the horizon. I could not help but admire the dexterity with which Tao piloted the flying machine, especially when we arrived at the shore of the island. Approaching the coast, I could recognize enormous dokos, their points as usual towards the sky. I counted a group of 9, but the island was sprinkled with others, smaller and less visible amongst the vegetation. Tao took us higher, and we were soon flying over what Tao called Kotra Kwo Doj Doko, the city of the 9 dokos. Skillfully, Tao brought us down between the dokos to a beautiful park located in their midst. In spite of my mask, I was aware that the golden mist that enveloped Thiaoouba was much denser around these dokos than elsewhere. Tao confirmed I was not mistaken in my perception, but she was not then able to explain the phenomenon as they were waiting for us. She led me beneath the archway of greenery and along a path which ran beside small ponds. Here, wonderful water birds frolicked and little waterfalls murmured. I found myself almost running to keep up with Tao, but didn't like to ask her to slow down. She appeared preoccupied in a way that was not typical of her. At one point, there was almost a catastrophe when I tried to jump, as much to amuse myself as to catch up with Tao. Due to the difference in gravity, I misjudged my leap and had to catch hold of a tree, which grew right on the water's edge to prevent myself from falling in. Eventually, we reached the central doko and stopped below the entrance light. Tao seemed to concentrate for several seconds, then she took me by the shoulder and we passed through the wall. She immediately removed my mask, advising at the same time that I half close my eyes, which I did. Light filtered through my lower lids, and after a time, I was able to open my eyes normally. I must say that this brightness, more golden than in my own doko, was considerably uncomfortable at first. I was most curious now, especially since Tao, who was usually very free and without protocol in her relations with everyone, seemed to have abruptly changed in her manner. Why? This doko must have been 100 meters in diameter. We headed directly, although more slowly, for the center, where 7 seats, each occupied, were arranged in a semicircle. The occupants sat as though petrified, and at first I thought them to be statues. It looks they resembled Tao, although their hair was longer, and their facial expressions more serious, giving them the air of being older. Their eyes seemed to be illuminated from within, which was somewhat disturbing. What struck me most of all was the golden haze, even stronger here than outside, which seemed to concentrate in halos around their heads. Since the age of 15, I don't recall ever having been in awe of another person. No matter how grand a personage, no matter how important he or she was, or thought they were, or thought they were, I have not felt intimidated by position. Neither have I had qualms about expressing my opinion to anyone. To me, the president of a nation is still just a person, and it amuses me that people regard themselves as VIPs. I mention this to make it clear I am not impressed by mere status. In the Doko, all that changed. When one of them raised a hand to indicate Tao and I should each take a seat facing them, I was indeed awestruck. And the word is feeble. I could not have imagined it possible that such radiant beings could exist. It was as though they were on the fireside and emitting rays from within. They sat on block like seats, fabric covered with straight backs. Each seat was of a different color. Some only slightly different, and others vastly different from their neighbors. Their clothes too differed in colors, suiting each wearer perfectly. All of them sat in what we call on earth the lotus position, that is, the sitting position of Buddha, with hands resting on knees. As previously mentioned, they formed a semicircle, and since there were seven of them, I reasoned that the central figure had to be the principal one, with three acolytes on either side. Of course, at the time, I was too overcome to note such details. It only occurred to me later. It was the central figure who addressed me in a voice so melodious and at the same time so authoritarian. I was stunned by it, particularly since he spoke in perfect French. You are welcome among us, Michel. May the Spirit assist and enlighten you. The others echoed, May the Spirit enlighten you. He began to rise gently above his seat, still in the lotus position, and floated towards me. This did not entirely surprise me, since Tao had previously demonstrated this technique of levitation. I wanted to rise before this undoubtedly great and highly spiritual personage, as a measure of the infinite respect inspired in me. In trying to move, I found I couldn't, as though paralyzed in my seat. He stopped just above and in front of me, placing both hands on my head and thumbs joined on my forehead. Uh, sorry, and the um He stopped just above in front of me, placing both his hands on my head and thumbs joined on my forehead above my nose, opposite the pineal gland, and the fingers joined at the top of my head. It was Tao who described these details to me later, for at the time I was overwhelmed by such a sensation that the details didn't register. During the time his hands were on my head, it seemed that my body no longer existed. A gentle warmth and delicate perfume originated within me, emanated the waves and blending with soft music that was barely audible. Suddenly, I could see amazing colors surrounding the figures opposite me, and as the leader turned slowly toward his seat, I could see a multitude of radiant colors around him, ones I had been unable to perceive before. The principal color was a mass of pale pink, which enveloped in seven figures as though in a cloud, and their movements caused that wonderful glowing pink to encircle us also. Pink as a representation of love. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. When I had sufficiently recovered my senses to turn towards Tao, she too was surrounded with wonderful colors, although less brilliant than those around the seven figures. You will notice that in speaking of these great personages, I instinctively use he rather than she. In explaining this, I can only suggest that the personalities of these special beings were so strong and their bearings so imposing that I recognized more of the masculine in them than the feminine. I mean no offense to women. My reaction was instinctive. It's a bit like imagining Methuselah as a woman. However, women or men, they had transformed me. I knew that the colors surrounding them were their auras. I was capable of seeing auras. Who knew for how long? And I wondered at what I saw. The leader had resumed his seat, and all eyes were fixed on me as if they wanted to see inside me, which indeed is what they were doing. Silence reigned for a time, which seemed interminable. I watched the varied colors of their auras vibrate and dance around them, sometimes far in the distance, and recognized the bouquet of color Tao had spoken of earlier. The golden halos, clearly defined, were almost saffron colored. It occurred to me they could not only see my aura, but possibly read it as well. I suddenly felt quite naked before this learned assembly. The question that haunted me was, why have they brought me here? Abruptly, the leader broke the silence. As Tao was already explained to you, Michelle, we have been chosen, or you have been chosen by us to visit our planet in order to report certain messages and to offer enlightenment on several important issues when you return to Earth. The time has come when certain events must occur. After several thousand years of darkness and savagery on planet Earth, a so called civilization appeared, and inevitably technology was developed, a development which was accelerated during the last 150 years. It has been 14,500 years since a comparable level of technological advance existed on Earth. This technology, which is nothing compared with true knowledge, is nevertheless sufficiently advanced to become harmful to the human race on Earth in the very near future. Harmful because it is only material knowledge and not spiritual knowledge. Technology should assist in spiritual development, or technology should assist spiritual development, not confine people more and more within a materialistic world, as is happening now on your planet. To an even greater extent, your people are obsessed with a single goal: affluence. Their lives are concerned with all that the pursuit of wealth entails: envy, jealousy, hatred of those richer, and contempt for those poorer. In other words, your technology, which is nothing compared to what existed on Earth more than 14,500 years ago, is dragging your civilization down and pushing it closer and closer to moral and spiritual catastrophe. I noticed that each time this great personage spoke of materialism, his aura and those of his acolytes flashed with a dull and dirty red, as though momentarily they were in the middle of burning bushes. We, the people of Thiaoouba, are assigned to assist, guide, and sometimes punish the inhabitants of planets under our guardianship. Fortunately, Tao had briefed me on Earth's history during our journey to Thiaoouba. Otherwise, I'd have surely fallen off my seat on hearing such a speech. I think, he resumed, that you already know what we mean by harmful to the human race. Many people on Earth believe atomic arms to be the major danger, but it is not so. The greatest danger concerns materialism. The people of your planet seek money. To some, it's a means of attaining power. To others, it's a means to acquire drugs, another curse, yet to others, it's a way of possessing more than their neighbors possess. If a businessman owns a large store, he then wants a second, then a third. If he commands a small empire, he wants to increase it. If an ordinary man owns a house in which he could live happily with his family, he wants a larger one, or to own a second one, then a third. Why this folly? Besides, a man will die. Oh, besides, a man will die and have to abandon all he has amassed. Perhaps his children will squander his legacy and his grandchildren will live in poverty. His whole life would have been preoccupied with purely material concerns, with insufficient time allowed for matters of the spirit. Others with money turn to drugs in their endeavor to procure an artificial paradise, and these people pay more dearly than do the others. Just a side note, I was a hospice nurse for over 25 years, and I see this all the time. I've taken care of CEOs and homeless people and anywhere, everything and everyone and everything in between. And it all comes down to, it doesn't matter how much Lamborghinis you have. It doesn't matter how many mansions you have. It doesn't matter how many businesses you have. All that doesn't matter, because when you face death at the end of life, the only thing that really matters is the peace that you live within yourself, or no peace, right? Peace or no peace. It's the relationships that you amend or not amend. So I see it all the time. It is so true. It kind of, when you face death, and most people don't face death until they're 50 or 60. I mean, nor quote, I wouldn't say normal, but most people, they go through life, you know, get a job, go up the corporate ladder, whatever, and they don't really face this until their parents uh, get old and right and die, which is usually when the adult child is in his 50s or 60s, maybe, right? Or 40s. So it's a lot of times it's a wake-up call. Not always, but usually. Anyways, that's a little side note there. Where am I? Okay. I see, he continued. I'm going much too fast and you're not following me, Michelle. You should be able to follow, however, since Tao has already initiated your education in these matters during your voyage. I felt ashamed, almost like when reprimanded by a teacher at school. The only difference being here, I was not able to cheat by saying I had understood when it wasn't true. He could read me like an open book. He deigned to smile at me, and his aura, which had been flaming like a fire, returned to its original hue. Now, once and for always, we will teach you and provide you with what you French call, quote, the key to the mystery. As you have heard, in the beginning there was the Spirit alone, and he created by his immense force all that exists materially. He created the planets, the suns, plants, animals with one goal in mind to satisfy his spiritual need. This is quite logical since he's purely spirit. Already, I see you are wondering why they need to create material things in order to attain spiritual fulfillment. I offer this by way of explanation. The Creator sought spiritual experiences through a material world. I see you still have difficulty following, but you are making progress. In order to have these experiences, he wanted to embody a tiny part of his spirit in a physical entity. To do this, he called on the fourth force, the force which Tao has not yet spoken of, and which concerns only spirituality. In this domain, universal law also applies. You most certainly know that the pattern of the universe dictates that 9 planets revolve around their sun. It is also the case that these suns revolve around a larger sun, which is the nucleus for 9 such suns and their 9 planets. So it continues right to the center of the universe from where the explosion referred to by the English as the Big Bang originated. Needless to say, certain accidents occur, and sometimes a planet will disappear in a solar system, or perhaps enter it, and later in time, the solar system will revert and base its structure again on the number 9. The fourth force had a very important role to play. It had to bring to fruition all that the spirit had imagined. It inserted, thus, an infinitesimal part of the spirit in the human body. This comprises what you could call the astral body, which forms 1/9 of the essential human being and consists of 1/9 of a higher self, which is sometimes called overself. The higher self of man is, in other words, an entity which sends 1/9 of itself into a human body, becoming this person's astral being. Other physical bodies are inhabited similarly by other ninths of the same higher self, and yet each part remains integral to the central entity. Further, the higher self is a ninth part of a superior higher self, which in turn is a ninth part of a more superior higher self. The process continues as far back as the source, which allows the enormous filtration of spiritual experience required by the spirit. Another side note, Abraham Hicks talked about that. Your inner self, your inner being within the inner being within an inner being within the inner being within your inner. My mind was blown away when I first heard that. My mind is still blown away when I talk about it. But yes, uh, mystical teachings talk about that. Esoteric teachings talk about that. And it to me, I don't know why, it just makes a lot of sense to me. So our concept of quote God is not really what we think he is, right? The old man in a beard, white beard, sitting on top of the heavens. Anyways, we got to rethink everything that we believe in. And I don't even know if the mystics, I think they even they have just a small perception of a much broader of broader universe that they don't even have access to or don't even know about. So I don't know. It's just mind-boggling to me. Okay, moving on. Sorry about that. You must not think that the higher self of the first category is insignificant in comparison with the others. It functions at a lower level, but is nevertheless extremely powerful and important. It is capable of curing illness and even resuscitating the dead. Now, there is a footnote about that. What is known on earth as spiritual healing can be achieved with the help of the higher self of the healer without the patient being present, providing the patient gives permission. The competent healer can assist the patient from anywhere in the world. There are many instances of people declared clinically dead who are brought back to life in the hands of doctors who had abandoned all hope for them. What generally happens in these cases is that the person's astral body meets with the higher self. This portion of the higher self has left the physical body during the period of death. It perceives its physical body below, and the doctors trying to resuscitate it. It can also perceive loved ones who mourn for it. In his present state, the astral body, the person will feel perfectly well, even blissful. Usually, he abandons his physical body, frequently the source of much suffering, to find himself catapulted down a psychic canal, at the end of which is a wondrous light and beyond a state of bliss. If before passing through this canal into the blissful light, sounds like the birth canal, doesn't it? Sounds like a canal to the light. If before passing through this canal into the blissful light, which is his higher self, he has the least will not to die, not on his own account, but for the sake of those who need him. Oops, sorry. For the sake of those who need him, young children, for example, he will ask to return. In certain cases, it will be permitted. You are in constant communication with your higher self by means of your cerebral canal. Acting as a transmitting and receiving post, it conducts special vibrations directly between your astral body and your higher self. Your higher self monitors you continually by day and by night and can intervene to save you from an accident. Someone, for example, who is to catch a plane finds that the taxi breaks down on the way to the airport. A second taxi called also breaks down, just like that. Just like that? Could you really believe in such a coincidence? The plane in question crashes 30 minutes later, leaving no survivors. Another person, an old and rheumatic a woman, and barely able to walk, starts to cross the street. There is a loud horn blast and a screeching of tires, but this person is miraculously able to leap to safety. How is this explained? It was not yet her time to die, and so her higher self intervened. In 1/100th of a second, the higher self triggered a reaction in her adrenaline glands, which for a few seconds provided enough strength to her muscles to enable her to execute the leap, which saved her life. Adrenaline released into the blood can make it possible to flee from imminent danger or to defeat the unbeatable through anger or fear. In too strong a dose, however, adrenaline becomes a lethal poison. So another side note there, you hear stories of moms uh, picking up cars, right, to save their kids. But in terms of death, you have a seed when you're born in esoteric studies. You have a seed it's called the heart seed, and it's located in your heart, right around the SA node in your physical heart. And this seed is an energetic seed that is the blueprint or records the time of your birth and the time of your death. And it is said that um, there's nothing you can do about the time of your birth. You know, when you're born, you're born. But the time of your death, you can change through good, through doing good deeds, through compassion, through loving kindness, through, acts of kindness, things like that. And you can change that death seed. And so I think Buddhism has a phrase about that. You die, you're born once, but you die many deaths. Interesting, eh? You have three blueprints when you're born. The heart seed is one of them. The other one is the mental permanent seed, right around where your pineal gland is. Um, and then the other one is in your solar system, your emotional permanent seed. And it's located at the very, very tip of your liver. And these are energetic. These are not, I don't think they're physical, but they're energetic seeds that you're born with. Every incarnated soul is born with. Those are your blueprints for this incarnation. Okay. Um, Little squirrel there. Sorry about that. Let's see, where am I? Okay, it isn't only the cerebral canal which is able to conduct messages between the higher self and the astral body. Another channel exists sometimes in dreams, or I should even say in sleep. At certain times during sleep, your higher self is able to call your astral body to itself and either communicate instructions or ideas or to regenerate it in some way, replenishing its spiritual strength or enlightening it in regard to solutions to important problems. For this reason, it is essential your sleep is undisturbed by intrusive noise or by nightmares resulting from harmful impressions received during the day. Perhaps you will better understand the importance of your old French saying, night brings counsel. The physical body in which you exist at the moment is already very complex, but still it is nothing compared with the complexity of the process of evolvement which occurs with astral bodies and the higher selves. In order to allow ordinary people on your planet to understand as easily as possible, I will make my explanation in the most simple terms. Your astral body, which inhabits every normal human being, transfers to its higher self all the sensations that are experienced during a lifetime in a physical body. These sensations pass through the immense filter of nine higher selves before arriving in the etheric ocean that surrounds the spirit. If these sensations are based essentially on materialism, the higher selves have enormous trouble filtering them, just as a water filter clogs quicker if it filters dirty water than if the water was already clear. If through the numerous experiences you have in your life, you ensure your astral body benefits in a spiritual sense, it will acquire more and more spiritual understanding. In time, which can vary from 500 to even 15,000 of your earth years, your higher self will have nothing more to filter. This part of itself, embodied in the astral being of Michel Desmarquet, will be so spiritually advanced it will have arrived at the next stage, where it will have to contend directly with the more superior higher self. We can compare this process with a nine-stage filter intended to rid the water passing through of nine elements. At the end of stage one in the process, one would have been completely eliminated with eight remaining. Of course, to make this information easier to digest, I'm making enormous use of imagery. This astral body then will have completed its cycle with the higher self of the first category and will then detach itself from higher self number one to rejoin the higher self of the second category. The entire process will be repeated. By the same token, the astral body will be sufficiently spiritually advanced to pass to a planet of the next category as well. I see you are not following me very well, and I am anxious that you will understand absolutely all that I explain to you. In his wisdom, the spirit, by means of the fourth force, provided for nine categories of planets. At present, you are on the planet Thiaoouba, which is in the ninth category, that is at the top of the scale. Earth is a planet of the first category and therefore at the bottom of the scale. What does this mean? The planet Earth could be likened to a kindergarten with the emphasis on teaching basic social values. A planet of the second category would then correspond with a primary school, which further values are taught. In both schools, adult guidance is imperative. The third category would comprise secondary schools where a foundation of values allows exploration beyond. Next, you would go to university where you are treated as an adult, for you would not only have attained a certain amount of knowledge, but you would also start to accept civic responsibility. This is the type of progress occurring with the nine categories of planets. The more spiritually advanced you are, the more you will benefit on a superior planet by an environment and general way of life which is superior. The very way in which you procure food is much easier, which in turn simplifies the process of organizing your way of life. The consequence is more effective spiritual development. On the higher planets, nature itself enters the stage to assist the pupil. And by the time you reach planets of the sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth category, not only is your astral body highly evolved, your physical body has also benefited from your development. We know you have already been favorably impressed by what you have seen on our planet. As you see more, you will appreciate that it is what you would call on Earth a paradise. And yet, compared with true happiness, when you become a pure spirit, it is still nothing. I must be careful not to make this explanation too long, for you must report it word for word, changing nothing in the book that you will write. It is absolutely essential you allow no personal opinion to intrude. No, not, don't get anxious. Tao will help you with the details when the time comes to start writing. From this planet, it is possible either to remain in a physical body or be reunited with the Great Spirit in the ether. As these words were uttered, the aura surrounding the leader shone more brightly than ever, and I was surprised to see him almost disappear in a golden mist, only to reappear a second later. You have understood that the astral body is a body which inhabits your physical body, recalling and um, noting all the understanding acquired during the course of its various lives. It can only be enriched spiritually, not materially. The physical body is merely a vehicle, which, in most cases, we abandon when we die. I will elaborate, for I see that in most cases has confused you. By this, I mean that some of us, including all on our planet, are able to regenerate the cells of our bodies at will. Yes, you have already noticed that most of us seem to be of the same age. We are one of three planets that are the most highly evolved in this galaxy. Some of us can and do directly join what we call the Great Ether. So, on this particular planet, we have arrived at a stage near perfection, both materially and spiritually. But we have our roles to perform, as does every creature existing in the universe. In fact, everything, including a single pebble, has its role. Our role as beings of a superior planet is to guide, to help with spiritual development, and even sometimes materially. We are in a position to give material assistance because we are technologically the most advanced people. Indeed, how could a father give spiritual guidance to his child if he were not older, more educated, and more skilled in diplomacy than the child? If the child should require physical punishment, as unfortunately is sometimes the case, isn't it important that the parent be physically stronger than the child? Certain adults who refuse to listen and who are absolutely stubborn also need to be corrected by physical means. You, Michel, come from the planet Earth, which is sometimes called the planet of sorrows. Indeed, the name is appropriate, but it is this way for a precise reason. It is intended to provide a learning environment of a quite specific kind. It is not because life there is so difficult that you have to intervene. You cannot lightly go against nature, destroying rather than conserving what the Creator has put at your disposal. That is, interfering with ecological systems, which you have been intricately designed. Certain countries, like Australia, where you are from, are beginning to show great respect for ecology, and it is a step in the right direction. But even in that country, what case is made of pollution, both water and air pollution? What is ever done about one of the worst forms of pollution? Noise. I say worst because people such as Australians pay virtually no attention to it at all. Ask someone if traffic noise bothers him, and the response will surprise you. 85% of the time, it will be, "What noise? What are you talking about?" "Oh, that noise." We get used to it. And it is precisely because they get used to it that the danger exists. Just then, Theora, as this high figure was called, made a gesture, and I turned around. He was replying to a question I had mentally posed. How can he speak of percentages and know so much about our planet with so much precision? Turning around, I almost uttered a cry of surprise, for behind me stood Biastra, and Lutoli. In itself, this was nothing surprising, but the friends I knew who measured 310 and 280 centimeters in height, respectively, were now reduced in size to correspond to my height. My mouth must have continued to gape, for Theora smiled. Can you understand that sometimes, and very often in these days, some of us live among your people on earth? And there is my answer to your question. To continue on the very important subject of noise, it is such a danger that if nothing is done, catastrophe is certain. Let us take the example of a discotheque. The people who expose themselves to music that is typically played 3 times too loudly are subjecting their brains and their physiological and astral bodies to vibrations which are also harmful. If they could see the damage that is caused, they would vacate the discotheque quicker than if there was a fire. But vibrations don't only come from noise, they also come from colors. And it is astonishing that on your planet, experiments conducted in this field have not been followed up. Our agents reported a particular experiment involving a man who was capable of lifting a certain weight. It was found after staring for a moment at a pink colored screen that he consistently lost 30% of his strength. Your civilization pays no attention to such experimentation. In fact, colors can enormously influence the behavior of human beings, and yet control of this influence requires that an individual's aura be taken into account. If, for example, you want to paint or wallpaper your bedroom with colors that are truly appropriate for you, you must be aware of the colors of certain principal points of your aura. By matching the colors of your walls with those of your aura, you can improve your health or maintain good health. Further, the vibrations emanating from these colors are essential for good mental balance, exerting their influence even while you sleep. I was wondering how we would I was wondering how we could be expected to know these significant colors in our auras when on Earth we were not capable of perceiving auras. Of course, Theora replied immediately without me having to say a word aloud. Michelle, it is now very important that your experts invent the special equipment necessary to enable perception of the aura, as this in turn will ensure that correct choices are made at the critical crossroads ahead. The Russians have already photographed the aura. This is the beginning, but the results obtained allow them only to read the first 2 letters of the alphabet, as it were, in comparison with what we were able to decipher. The reading of the aura in order to heal the physical body is nothing compared with what such a reading can achieve for the psychic body or the physiological body. It is in the area of the psyche that on earth your greatest problems exist. At the moment, most responsibility is taken for the physical body, but this is a serious mistake. If your psyche is poor, you will influence your physical appearance accordingly. But regardless, your physical body will wear out and die one day, whereas your psyche, being part of your astral body, never dies. On the contrary, the more you cultivate your mind, the less you will be burdened by your physical body, and the quicker you will proceed through your cycle of lives. We could have brought you to our planet in astral body, but instead we have brought you here in physical body, and for an important reason. I see you already understand our reason. This pleases us, and we thank you for your willingness to assist us in our task. The Theora stopped, I think it's then. Theora stopped talking and seemed to lapse into thought. At the same time, fixing me with his luminous eyes, I cannot say how much time lapsed or elapsed. I know my state became more and more euphoric, and I was aware that the auras of the seven personages were gradually changing. The colors became more vivid in places, softer in colors, while the outer edges became misty. Oh, sorry about that. Move my camera here. This mist became more golden and pink as it spread, gradually blurring the seven figures. I felt Tao's hand on my shoulder. No, you are not dreaming, Michelle. It's all quite real. She spoke very loudly, and as if to prove her point, she pinched my shoulder so hard she left a bruise that could be seen for several weeks. Why did you do that? I would not have thought you capable of such violence, Tao. I'm sorry, Michelle, but sometimes strange means are employed. The theory always disappears and sometimes appear in this manner, and you might have thought it part of a dream. I am entrusted with the task of ensuring that you recognize what is real. With these words, Tao pivoted me around and I followed her as we departed by the same route we had come. End of chapter 6. Oh, interesting, huh? Little glimpse of what it's like to be in the higher dimensions. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. We will continue our reading next week. And in the meantime, check out our other book clubs, our newsletter, our podcast, our merch, our YouTube channel, the podcast with Samuel Chong, which is very interesting, and our website. All right. I hope you guys all have a great day and have a and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye now.